Hello, thank you for logging on. My name's Barry Shurlock. As we all know, these are difficult times with COVID and we can't access the archives. I personally can't wait to get back to them. But meanwhile, I'd like to tell you something about them in general. And I will now screen share for the slides. Okay, so this talk is being presented by the Hampshire Archives Trust, jointly with the Hampshire Field Club. I'm a trustee of the Hampshire Archives Trust, and I'm a member of the Local History Section Committee of the Hampshire Field Club. The title is Archives Galore. It's a general talk about archives with a special reference to Hampshire, and there's my email address if you need to contact me. Now, the Hampshire Archives Trust exists in order to support, promote, and improve access to archives. It also has a grant-giving function to support projects of various kinds. The Local History Section of the Hampshire Field Club has a similar remit for local history. It promotes meetings and is involved with a variety of publications. This is a 20-minute overview, just a short look at archives, in the hope that we might present more detailed talks in the future. Now, archives are the bedrock of all history. Of course, there are other ways of accessing information involving objects, buildings, landscape, archaeology, but without a source, a statement is merely hearsay. This, by the way, is an illustration from a manuscript showing Henry VIII giving a foundation charter to Dean Kingsmill, surrounded by his cannons. We tend to think archives are just paper, but of course there are many other forms of archives that I want to cover, including photographs, artwork and drawings, film with associated scripts, and oral recordings with transcripts, as well as ephemera and books. Ephemera, of course, include all sorts of items such as posters, booklets, and the like, often giving information you can't find elsewhere. This picture, by the way, shows a donkey cart delivering a pig to the Swan Hotel in Alresford. It tells us something about the way people used to do things. Now, archives come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and I'm just giving a few examples here. The Cope collection of the Hartley Library of the University of Southampton has a collection of more than 1,500 books, all on various topics associated with Hampshire. The Hampshire Field Club proceedings, which have been published since 1887, are all online and cover a vast number of topics associated with the county. There are many local history groups. I just mentioned two here. There's the Romsey Local History Society, which twice a week, when things are normal, has a drop-in session where you can put queries to individuals or access the archives. They have a vast archive there of photographs, documents, and also bound copies of local newspapers. Then I'd also like to mention the Cheriton Village Archive, which is really held by one person. And she holds exhibitions from time to time, and you can make appointments to get information. There are many local societies like this, and rarely can you not find somebody who knows something about almost anything. And then another example, the University of Leicester online has a whole series of county directories, including those for Hampshire. There are many similar specialist archives online these days. This illustration, by the way, shows the estate of the Earl of Peterborough, who built a grand house in the Bevis Mount part of Southampton, which is now, of course, completely built over. And you can still trace the field boundaries and the details of this estate in the built environment. Now, major Hampshire archives. Of course, there's the Hampshire Record Office, which is based in Winchester and which covers the whole county, with the exception of the two cities of Portsmouth and Southampton. They have their own individual archives. Portsmouth, for example, has a huge collection of municipal archives. It also has a special collection on, as you would expect for Portsmouth, the Royal Navy. And then there are collections on Conan Doyle, who started his life in Southsea, and Charles Dickens, who was born in Portsmouth. Southampton archives have a lot of material, as you would expect, on the port and commercial shipping. And it has a local history and maritime digital archive with a lot of material accessible online. And then there's Winchester College. And Winchester College was founded towards the end of the 14th century and was endowed with a number of estates. And over the years, it's continued to own these estates and many others. And so it's acquired a huge archive of material relating to particularly estate history, but also the college itself. And the picture here at the top shows the 3-volume printed catalogue of the Winchester College muniments, as they call them, which is an extremely valuable source. It was compiled by Sheila Himsworth, who's the lady in the photograph at the bottom of the slide. Now, although many of the projects we'll be concerned with are involving Hampshire, it's a good idea to start nationally. Here, for example, I've given an example from the National Archives of Wallace and Stevens, the top panel here. Now, Wallace and Stevens were engineering manufacturers. They made traction engines and many other items in Basingstoke. But you can see here that there's a large archive at the Museum of English Rural Life in Reading. So if you start nationally, you can find out where there are archives relating to the subject of interest outside Hampshire. Also, I mentioned here other national archives. There are far too numerous to list, but here are a few examples. For example, the National Museum of the Royal Navy has a huge archive, much material available on its website. And then if you're interested in the poor law or workhouses, there's an archive, an individual archive, which is extremely helpful, covers the whole of the country, has a lot of material, background material on legislation, etc. And then for non-conformity, there's Dr. Williams Centre for Dissenting Studies, which is hosted by Queen Mary University in London. And there are many other specialist university sites, such as the Centre for 18th Century Studies at the University of York. And I also mention here the Church of England Clergy Database. There are a few of us who from time to time don't have to research the lives and activities of churchmen, and this is a very useful source. This is another page from the National Archives, just demonstrating the huge range of topics that are covered by the National Archives, and each of them that has a guide on researching and a good deal of background information. And then here's another item from the National Archives about the Hampshire Regiment. So the main point is start nationally, and then you can find local material that is not held in the county. I want to mention the British Association for Local History. This is the National Association for all local history groups and publishes two extremely valuable publications. The Local Historian, which is a quasi-academic journal, which is very useful for showing how people have tackled subjects in other counties, and also covers general trends in local history research. And then Local History News, which is, as it says, more of a newsletter. The British Association for Local History is a very good central point for keeping in touch with what's happening in the archives and local history community. Now, archives often have catalogues, and catalogues are extremely valuable. This is just an example from the Hampshire Record Office catalogue. I was interested in someone called Florence Suckling, and so by inserting the words Florence and Suckling in the appropriate part of the search panel of the Record Office, you get 42 records, of which the one on the right is a particularly interesting one. It shows the areas that Mrs. Suckling researched over the years, and also at the bottom is a little biography. Now, catalogues, in my view, are absolutely invaluable, not only for finding particular information, but for also giving ideas for research topics. You can start with a topic and then seek to find sources, or you can work the other way around to see what sources are available. Because if you've got a particularly rich area of sources, this obviously could lead to a project. There's no point in starting a project if you've got no sources. There are, of course, many other finding aids, including some commercial ones that I'm sure will be well known to you. Ancestry, which has got birth, marriage, deaths, as well as census records, court, government, and criminal records. And then Find My Past, which has a similar remit, but also covers newspapers and other records. And it's recently won the contract for the 1921 census, which is being released in January 2022. And then I'd like to mention the Hampshire Genealogical Society, which is obviously concerned with family history. It has a lot of material on various formats, online, on CDs, including monumental inscriptions from churchyards, and also publishes a lot online in association with the Family History Societies. It also includes research tips, including what it calls brick walls, which is when you're pursuing a line of inquiry and you come to a complete dead end. How do you get around it? It also publishes a series of village history booklets, which give basic information on a large number of villages. Very useful if you're exploring an area you know very little about. Now, I mentioned film and sound. The Hampshire Record Office contains a large amount of films, videos, and oral recordings. These are part of the Wessex Film and Sound Archive, which was jointly developed by the Hampshire Archives Trust, the Hampshire County Council, and the British Film Institute. It covers not only Hampshire, but adjacent counties. It has, I'm told, 22,000 films and videos in its archive and 16,000 sound recordings. All the Hampshire items are catalogued in the Hampshire Record Office catalogue with the prefix AV for audio-visual. Also, the catalogue entries often contain descriptions of the films and the recordings and a lot of background information, and are in fact a source in their own right. With them, and many of the sound recordings have transcripts, so a very valuable source. And then there's the Hampshire Cultural Trust. Now, this is the umbrella body responsible for museums in the county and also performing arts. And as well as that, most museums, of course, as well as holding objects, will have a lot of documentary material describing the objects and background information. So most museums also have an archive. Quite a lot of material is on the Hampshire Cultural Trust website, particularly illustrations. I show here an early motor car made by the Thornycroft Steam Wagon Company, which started life in Chiswick and then moved to Basingstoke. And there's a great deal of material of this kind on the Hampshire Cultural Trust website. Now, often one is researching an industrial activity, and then the Business Archives Council is a very valuable central point. It has a huge online bibliography about individual businesses and the history of industries. It also lists accounts of specific businesses and industries. I'm told it has 40,000 items. And these are not only conventional books and documents, but also ephemera like marketing brochures, handbooks, instruction leaflets, publicity, and the like. It also publishes a number of guides, a directory of corporate archives, and guides on shipbuilding, banking, pharmaceuticals, and other industries. In addition, since 1965, it's published a journal and a newsletter 4 times a year, and these are all available online, providing you subscribe to the Business Archives Council. It's a small cost, and if this is an area that interests you, it really is a prime archive centre. Now, I want to talk about Hampshire Archives Trust itself. We have a very active website that I would recommend. It contains a large number of story-based topics which cover a huge number of events in Hampshire. It also covers the latest happenings in the archives world, new websites and the like. It describes ongoing projects of various kinds, some funded by the Hampshire Archives Trust itself, and other ongoing research projects. And it has a lot of information on individual local history groups, a great deal of detail about their activities, how they were formed, how you can join, what they publish, and the like. And then we have a calendar of events that gives brief details and contacts for events happening all over Hampshire. This picture, by the way, is of G.E.M. Skews, who is a celebrated fisherman who fished above Winchester and invented a method of fishing on chalk streams called nymph fishing. That is a wet fly, a fly that sinks. So a little more about the website. Archives, of course, are the bedrock of history, and the website is a one-stop site for history and heritage and draws together all the local history and archives in the county. It's open to all local history groups and acts as a form of digital notice board. In addition, it also announces all the events held by the Hampshire Archives Trust. This picture, by the way, shows Colonel William Cornwallis West, who tried to found a seaside resort at Milford-on-Sea and didn't quite make it. Finally, I'd like to mention the grants that the Hampshire Archives Trust give. We welcome applications for any suitable project. If you go online, you can find the details of the sort of projects we fund. We have 3 different grant streams, small sums up to £500. We make decisions every 2 to 3 months, rapid decisions, and the application is relatively simple. Between £500 and £10,000, if you go online, you get an application form and you can see what information we need to make decisions, which we have deadlines twice a year, the end of June and the end of December. And then we have emergency grants. If something is suddenly available for purchase and might otherwise leave the county or be destroyed, we have a funding stream for that. So we hope that you will be encouraged to make applications. So finally, a few suggestions. Pay a visit to a record office. Please visit the Hampshire Archives Trust and the Hampshire Field Club websites. Become a member of HAT or the Hampshire Field Club and apply for a grant. And then if you're interested in volunteering, we're always very interested to hear from you. Thank you very much for listening. And with thanks to all the archivists and local historians for the wonderful work you do. If you have any comments, there's my email address.